we now at war with Iran?
No, we're not. This is not a war against Iran. This is very simple. 67 days ago, the President of the United States sent the Iranians a letter, and it said, you're not going to have nuclear weapons. You're not going to have a militarized nuclear program. Let's negotiate. I want to do this diplomatically. I want to do this peacefully. They tried to play him along the way they've played every American president for the last 35 years. And, the president told them, if we don't get a deal, which is what he wanted, then I'll have to handle it differently. And that's what he did last night. He handled it differently. But that was an Iranian choice. We didn't make that choice. They did. By playing games with Donald Trump, they made a huge mistake. And President Trump acted last night. And I think the world today is safer and more stable than it was 24 hours ago. And a bunch of these countries putting out statements condemning us, privately, they all agree with us that this needed to be done. They got to do what they got to do for, their own public relations purposes. But the only people in the world that are unhappy about what happened in Iran last night is the regime in Iran.
As you guys already know, Donald Trump had took decisive action against Iran. I showed you the intro. This is their thought. This is how they justify the attacks. And given that context, I think the attacks were warranted, I guess. They were being decisive. End of the day, Iran is so unpredictable that, it's not a comfortable position to allow them to have nuclear weapons. Now, I talked about how I wouldn't support U.S. involvement. I think a lot of Americans wouldn't support that. But given the justifications that Trump has given, and they're still looking for peace, and I already told you guys, I agree with that approach. If it's to put more pressure on Iran to come to the deal and make a peace deal or whatever, I'm perfectly fine with these tactics that Donald Trump had deployed. Now, the retaliation part, I think Iran, like I already told you, Iran feels like a paper tiger, right? It's like they don't really have no really threat to the Americans. It's most likely they're going to attack Israel or something. But at the time of me making this video, I think it's more likely they're going to attack Israel more than they'll attack the USA. But we'll see. I think that if the only cards that Iran has is to economically, affect oil by shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, I believe that's what it's called. But I think it'll be almost suicidal because you're going to affect Saudi Arabia's check, Qatar's check. I don't think it'll be in Iran's best interest, or it'll be smart for them to disrupt the supply chain of oil going through that region. That's all I'm trying to say. But we'll see. I think this could be easily a Soleimani thing. Remember, Trump assassinated Soleimani, I forget his name. And Iran effectively just threw missiles at the dirt and did a saber rattle, and that was it. And I think it's more looking like that situation. I think I already talked about on this channel that World War III, this fear of World War III is overblown. I don't think Iran, would want to do that. But end of the day, I see Donald Trump talking about regime change. I don't know if I want to be in favor of that. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know about it, but all I'm doing is saying that this is all on Iran. Iran allowed this situation to happen. They had 60 days to make a peace deal with Trump and still save face. They didn't comply. They were giving him the runaround. And given with that context, I kind of support what Donald Trump did. Iran gave Donald Trump no choice. For decades, they have been adamant that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon. Iran decided to forgo diplomacy in pursuit of a bomb. This is surgical strikes operated perfectly. President Trump acted with prudence and decisiveness. And I think time will tell on this decision. I think given the information that we have now, I think Trump made a good decision. Especially, I think one of Trump's best decisions is not notifying Democratic congressmen that this would happen. Because as you know, Trump always get leaks. Like someone's always leaking on what Trump is doing. And we all know where the leaks usually come from. It's from these Democratic activists, right? And Roe v. Wade was the prime example of these Democratic activists leaking information from the White House, from the federal government. And Donald Trump didn't want to take any chances with Midnight Hammer. So here's a clip of, Scott Jennings. He's finally back. Thank God he's back, right? The CNN clips have not been the same since he's been gone. And you're going to see him balk at this idea that Trump had to notify Congress of anything. I digress. Let's take a look at the clip.
I think that there are a lot of questions that are being raised by Congress right now. And the reason that they're being raised is because normally you would need congressional approval for something like this. And I know that my friend here is laughing a little bit, but I will say,
I mean,
but I will
covered Congress for a long time, but they gave a lot of that away.
But I will say, I mean, in order for the president to take action without congressional approval, he needed to show that there was a real true threat to the United States and that the strike would not cause escalation. The problem with this is that normally you would have a group of lawyers from all across the agencies that actually would make these determinations. Trump did away with that at the beginning of this administration. So it's unclear what type of legal advice Trump was getting. Department of Defense usually puts out a statement and says what the legality is of any strike that the president is taking without congressional action. Here, we have not heard from DOD what is happening there. So what will be critical in the weeks to come is Congress must see the underlying intelligence about how they were in direct threat and how the U.S. needed to respond without congressional approval. But as of right now, I have not seen that.
You're arguing that after 46 years of the Iranian regime killing Americans, threatening Americans, saying over and over and over again, death to America, that maybe they were just, didn't mean it, that they're fiery but mostly peaceful Iranian butchers? I mean, I don't understand. This is a righteous struggle.
So we're also finding out Democrat lawmakers were not briefed on this attack. However, some Republican lawmakers were. Why?
Yeah, it's called operational security. And Democrats as a whole care more about opposing Trump than they actually care about doing good for the American people. There's a very good chance if Democratic lawmakers would have found out, there would have been leaks to the press, or they just would have went out to the press and tried to blow up the entire operation. And part of that is because many of them have Trump derangement syndrome. Again, it's more important to oppose Trump than anything else. Many Democrats also have open hostility towards Israel and have shown sympathy towards terrorist organizations. So those proxies for Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, many Democrats have shown sympathy towards them. Democrats likely would have immediately politicized this national security issue, which would then have caused more problems. So to make it simple, they needed operational security, and involving Democrats is the way to blow that up.
And, a lot of people, the Democrats are already trying to politicize this, as you saw from the clips that I showed you. I think that it's one of the biggest reasons people call this Operation Midnight Hammer a success is that no missiles were shot at any the airplanes. None of the airplanes, no missiles, not even a slight reaction from the Iran's defense. And that's because there was no leaks, there was no inclination that Trump and the U.S. military was going to take this action. And I think the number one reason for that is for the fact that Democrats was not aware this was happening. As you saw from the clip, I agree with Jeffrey, is that if Democrats had any inkling of this going on, they would have politicized it, they would have blown it up, and no one would be aware of that. And that was one of the main things that Pete Hegseth was concerned about, that, hey, we want to keep things close to the chest. We don't want to notify our next moves, right? And a lot of the reasons that we're dealing with Iran and the possible threat of them getting a nuke, yes, I know Netanyahu and Israel been complaining about these people getting a nuke for over 46 years. I understand that. But it's Democrats that enabled this stuff. Remember how we got here. Hillary Clinton supplied Iran with uranium to enrich their nuclear program. Barack Obama gave Iran $1.7 billion that were used to fund their nuclear program. Joe Biden unfreezed over $16 billion of funds for Iran. You don't even blame Trump for this. Don't ever blame Trump for this. And this is pretty much where the sentiment is. And I think this is one of the number one reasons why Trump didn't even inform the Democratic Party until after the fact. I believe the president is required within 48 hours of an operation to notify Congress, either before or after. Trump chose after, because that way it limits the Democrats' ability to politicize this and hinder the operation. Because I believe if Democrats knew about this, we would have had some inkling of what Trump was planning a long time ago. And Iran would have some inkling of what Trump was doing, though, because it showed that Iran was paying attention to what the media was saying and what there was being spoke about in the media. And it's just baffling how Democrats still have not realized, for instance, Adam Schiff, that he still have not realized that Democrats not only are not trusted by Donald Trump, Republicans, they're not even trusted by their own supporters. So I don't think there will be much outrage of the fact that Democrats were kept in the dark over this. And honestly, given their track record, given their I told like this is why I try to warn Democrats that anti-Trumpism is gonna bite you on the butt. Everyone's gonna be like, yeah, that makes sense. These guys just want to oppose Trump. They don't care about the American people. They only care about themselves and their party. That's it. That's the only thing Democrats care about. And this situation just highlights that. The fact that you can't be trusted with military secrets because you will possibly leak them. And don't tell me they wouldn't leak it. They would have leaked it.
Strikes again against Iran last night. He says that they have been successful. Do you see any upside, any positive news for the security of the world in learning of the success of these strikes?
First of all, Casey, I want to express my gratitude that the pilots are all out safely and acknowledge the skill, the bravery, and the professionalism of all the military forces that were engaged in this military operation. But it's not an operation that should have ever been authorized by the president in the absence of intelligence showing that Iran had made the decision to break out and build a bomb. The intelligence I've seen, and it's been limited, indicates that Iran had certainly enriched uranium but had not made the decision to build a bomb or pursue the mechanism of a bomb. And in the absence of that, this is not a strike that should have been ordered. In watching Hegseth during that press conference this morning, we saw a lot of arrogance from the defense secretary. And as wars in the Middle East have demonstrated, arrogance is a deadly commodity. We simply don't know what is going to occur now, whether Iran will retaliate, whether Iran was able to evacuate some of the enriched material from Fordo. There were commercial satellite images of trucks lined up at Fordo and leaving Fordo in the days preceding the strike. So a lot of questions, including the risk to American service members. In terms of, is there anything positive to come out of it? Yes. I mean, the destruction of these facilities is a positive in the sense that it will set back Iran's program. And look, this is a nefarious regime that is the preeminent state sponsor of terror. It should have never been pursuing a nuclear program. But it is very possible, and I think we have to anticipate, Iran now kicks out any inspectors. It leaves the non-proliferation treaty. And if it wasn't in a sprint for a bomb, it is now going to engage in a sprint for the bomb. So a lot of uncertain.
Yeah, so you hear all that, like long-winded, all this, I call it bloviating from Adam Schiff. But he seemed like he's more mad that he wasn't informed of the intelligence than anything, right? And he talks about, he was glad that these guys were safe. And I think the number one reason why these guys' safety was so high, like not a single missile, not a single anything was fired at these guys, is the fact that they kept everything close to the chest, that no Democrat was notified of what was going on, right? And then he tries to, he always politicizing this. Oh, we're not sure if they did it. End of the day, Adam Schiff, your party, your party's leaders, from Joe Biden to Hillary Clinton, had given Iran the ability to even be in a threatening position to us in the first place, right? And this is the problem that I have with the Democratic Party. Is like when you look in their actions and you see the results from their policies, from allowing mass immigration, enabling illegals to be in this country, incentivizing illegals to break the law, right? You see all this enabling behavior from the Democratic Party, and then you see how they had essentially fund Iran to put themselves in a position where they can even threaten our national security, right? Whether it be politically making it harder for us to directly confront them when they're funding terrorism, right? Now we're concerned about sleeper cells, right? But why are we so concerned with sleeper cells? Because of the open border of Joe Biden, because of past Democratic presidents. Come on. They bring this all, and then they mad why they got Stonewall and been kept in the dark about this operation. But I digress. I want to play this clip. I think it's a very fascinating clip of Margaret. We know her, we love her. Always getting owned by people. This pretentious attitude is getting checked right now because she and Marco Rubio are going to argue about the validity of Iran pursuing nukes, right?
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the supreme leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is
everything
the
they need
key
to build a
point in
weapon.
U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
the political decision had not
I know
been
that better
made.
than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you.
Liberal arrogance right here, man. How you gonna argue with the Secretary of State about foreign policy? All right, he has more intimate information than you do, and this is what's hurting the Democrats right now, is because they know they're not being fully briefed. So they're trying to be there. Adam Schiff, I don't know if you understand that. He was very cautious to be like, oh, we don't know. I don't have, based on the information that I have, because they can't make a determining factor. And I think this is, just politics being played. But I put the whole blame, the entire blame on Iran. Iran, the Democratic Party that enabled them to put themselves in this position to threaten us, right? This is all on Iran. This is Iran's fault, right? Look, it's precision strikes. They only hit military sites, so it limited the danger to Iranian people. I think this is as good as it gets from the boiling frog perspective. Now Iran has an opportunity to respond. Either they do it economically, they throw more missiles at Israel because they're not hitting us with any missiles. I'm telling you right now, they're not going to hit America with no missiles. This is why I'm not as fearful about World War III, because seeing all these attacks on Iran. First, you got your general assassinated in an embassy. You didn't do nothing really. You retaliated against Israel. U.S. just dropped bunker busters on your stuff to destroy your operation. The latest thing I heard from this time of me recording this video is North Korea condemning the attacks. But that's, as Marco Rubio already pointed out, that's just for them to save face, just to keep their public relations. But in private, they're like, yeah, I don't really care. China don't care. Russia don't seem to care. Iran's pretty much publicly, from a public perception standpoint, looks isolated. So, I don't think there will be much of a retaliation, because that's my main concern of the attack. But I don't think the retaliation will be very substantive or very impactful. But, that's just my political calculus. You let me know in your comment section what you guys think. Let's get back in the video.
Whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons, because they can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No, but
so
that's a question. That's a question of intent, and in the intelligence assessment that it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold state and use this leverage. I'm talking about the public March assessment, and that's why I was asking you if you know something more from March.
But that's also an inaccurate representation of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program. So why would you enrich uranium at 60%? Right. If you don't intend to one day use it to take it to 90 and build a weapon. Right. Why are you developing ICBM?
Yeah, I think the argument about intent, it's lackluster. It doesn't matter about the intent. Is the fact that they have the option to, and I think that is the number one thing that triggered this decisive action from Donald Trump and our military, is that they have the ability to, right? And not about intentions. End of the day, you can't. End of the day, that's human nature. As humans, we can't judge. It's hard to judge people's intentions. We can only judge their actions. Actions speak louder than the words. Hey, they have the option to. And U.S. asks themselves, President Trump asks themselves, do we want them to have the option or ability to do this? No. This is why the preemptive strike happened. Hey, I told you, this is all on Iran. I digress. Let's continue.
ICBMs. Why do you have 8,000 short-range missiles and 2,000 to 3,000 long mid-range missiles that you continue to develop? Why do you do all these things? They have everything they need for a nuclear weapon. They have the delivery mechanisms, they have the enrichment capability, they have the highly enriched uranium that is stored.
Yes.
That's all we need to see.
Right. Well, and
especially in the hands of a regime that's already involved in terrorism and proxies and all kinds of things around.
Yeah, but pretty much if Iran had nukes, it'll be hard to, because then Iran funds a lot of this terrorism that goes on in the Middle East, on Israel, and sometimes on other countries, Afghanistan and Iraq. They're the source of that. And if they're able to create a situation where it's a mutually assured destruction with nukes, it'll make it a lot harder for the U.S. to do anything to them. And therefore, in extinction, it'll be hard to do anything to the terrorist organizations that they fund. And I think this is the national security angle that they're using to justify these attacks. And I think it's a pretty solid one. It's a pretty fair assessment from Marco Rubio. In my estimation, you probably think differently in the comment section. Let me know what you guys are thinking. I think I'm going to leave it off there. I think we have enough of Margaret getting pretty much owned on a regular basis. I think I'm going to give her a break. But I just think that's where my head is at right now. I think the attacks are justified. In a day, I still see this as a tactic to increase pressure on Iran to come to the table and surrender or make a peace deal. And I think the part of the peace deal will be for the government to step down or to resign or whatever. I know I hear the exiled prince from Iran is talking about possibly coming back and being involved in regime change. I'm not totally against regime change. It's how it's done that I'm against, right? So if the surrender, like, because I'm starting to think, because Donald Trump's put out a truth message talking about he wants to make Iran great again, and it was last great when it was under a monarchy, if I remember correctly. Maybe someone can correct me if I was wrong. Iran used to be one of the most progressive democracies in the Middle East until somebody overthrew them. Not going to say any names. But I think if regime change is done as a kind of, hey, you have to step down, you have to remove yourself from government, you have to do this as part of a peace deal, I may be more open to hearing that argument. But, I digress. I think I'm going to leave it off there. Let me know your thoughts and perspective about the preemptive strikes. How do you feel about Democrats being kept in the dark? Do you agree with the assessment that I made about Democrats being kept in the dark, that they would have leaked it just to spite Trump? I'd like to hear your thoughts and perspective in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you feel so inclined. It really does help me out in the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.